orientation planning. Orientation is on the horizon. We just matched our residents. We're planning for a new arrival, a new batch of physician residents for our program. And so orientation is one of the important things that we need to do and have ready to kind of set them up for a successful residency experience. So just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Hannah Ponder. I'm the Director of GME Administration at Yuma, Arizona, at the Yuma Regional Medical Center. We have a family medicine program of currently 10, 10, and 10 residents. And I've been here for almost 8 years, almost celebrating my 8th year anniversary. So super excited to spend some time with you all today. Hope you find this very informative and helpful.
Hello, and I am Michelle Olivieri. I am the GME Director for Lawrence Family Medicine Residency in Massachusetts. We are one of the 4-year length of training programs, and we are actually in the process of expanding. So we were previously 4 classes of 10, and we are working our way to 4 classes of 12. Right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Ms. Hannah, next slide, please. So we just want to learn who we're talking to today. I see a lot of very familiar names on the screen, but if you want to just go ahead and put it to the Zoom chat box. How old is your program? Is this your first class of residents and you're just trying to figure out what to do? Is it a newer program and you've done a few orientations, but you just want to figure out how to streamline and tweak a little bit? Or are you a well-established program? You inherited a very lovely orientation checklist and you just want to compare notes with other folks. So it looks like we got quite a few established programs on. First class starting July 1st, welcome. Brand new first class. All right, so we have a little bit of a mix. Awesome. Beautiful. Program coming in brand new, well-established, comparing notes. Awesome.
That's awesome. I love to see all the varied places that everyone is coming from. And I think all of this is really great, not only to learn, but also to kind of compare notes on what other people are doing. So why orientation? What is the purpose of doing that? Well, it's to help set our residents off on a great foot to start a 3-year experience in our program with our institution and in our community. And so we need to give them all of the tools, all of the information that they need, and really set a clear goal for what they are aiming for in order to be successful and to hit the mark. So really, we're going to talk about all the different things that we have to provide them, learn about them, or give them in order to be successful for the next 3 years. So orientation, what does it promote? Well, I mean, we've established with science and surveys have proven, not just in residency program, but with all employment, that successful orientations really provide additional engagement for employees. It improves retention, which if we improve retention, that saves the institution money if we don't have to continue replacing people that churn out. If our residents are engaged, if they're learning, if they're doing well, they're going to be providing better patient care, which is always the focus of what we are here for. Better communication because we've established what those expectations are. They're more innovative because they feel that they're in a safe environment and we are approachable so they can try things, perhaps make mistakes, and continue that innovation process. They build those connections with their team in order to provide better teamwork. And clear understanding of expectations is always super important for all of us. And what else does that lead to? Well, it leads to happier program administrators, which is always super important.
All right, so now we need to think about what all goes into orientation. What are the things that you need to start thinking about? I think probably most of us either have our orientation schedules mostly planned or are still in the process of planning, or they're completely done. But the first thing you want to know is, how long do you have for your orientation? When does it start? When does it end? What are the things that you have to include in your orientation, whether it's from your program or from your institution? And then if after all of that is scheduled, what would be nice to include and sprinkle into your orientation scheduled? Who are your key speakers, people that you need to tap into their calendars and get them booked ASAP? What conference rooms do you need to book, or other external space do you need to look at? What are the mandatory trainings that you need to include in your orientation schedule? Pretty important to most residents, what are you going to feed them? And then what things need to be purchased? And that's where you really want to hone in on your budget. Laptops, phones, swag, lab coats. What are all the different things that you need to purchase and have ready for your orientation? All right, now for your timeline. We're going to really hone in on that part. How long do you have? Some programs start in mid-June, others have a hard start on July 1st. So feel free to put into the chat how long you guys have and when you start. The things that you really need to schedule first, basically it's your HR day. Most of the orientation can't really happen until they have their laptops, they're into the system, they have their emails set up. And then you want to also make sure that you have the necessary trainings locked in. A lot of those can be half or full days, so they take up quite a bit of time in your orientation schedule. And then those key speakers that have very difficult schedules, whether it's faculty members and you have to work around clinic or rounding schedules, CEO, CMO, people that have very packed calendars, and you really want to make sure you have those booked as soon as possible. And then in the chat, I'm seeing 2 weeks, 4 weeks. For me personally, we actually have a 7-week orientation schedule. We start in mid-June, and that's what we call the admin orientation, and that's the HR stuff. We go over nuts and bolts and policies and all of the boring stuff, basically. And then our residents do a 1-week Spanish immersion. And then in July, we actually get into the clinical and workshop orientation. We call it the Family Medicine Intro Month. Hannah, you want to jump in with what you guys do?
Yeah, I know we tend to have a little bit longer orientations than most people, so I know that may be a little frustrating for some of you, but ours is 4 weeks. We do have a hard start on July 1. We don't expect them to do anything before that other than some onboarding paperwork. But we do have the first 4 weeks of residency that we devote entirely to what we call family medicine principles, but it's an orientation not only to the institution, but they also, everyone gets their certification training like BLS, PALS, ACLS. They'll do that together. So everybody is on the same renewal timeline. And then we start adding in those things that we really feel are important to helping make them successful. But like Michelle was saying in this slide, specifically thinking about who you're going to incorporate into these calendar schedules. If you have faculty that you know are in clinic during July and you need them to participate, make sure those clinic schedules are blocked. If you have senior residents that you're pulling in to do various things, or perhaps shadow or do one-on-one experiences with them, make sure you get those blocked. Make sure that those rotation schedules are really manipulated around what you have. And any of those speakers or trainers that we have coming in to teach our residents, we always make sure we can communicate that early so that those timelines and their schedules are blocked, and we can make sure we have those high priority items in place now. All right. Nice slides on it. Okay, so what can you complete now besides what we just talked about? Well, blocking those schedules are super, super important. When we don't have calendars in place correctly, schedules always affect people's attitudes, and patients are always affected if it's something that's affecting a clinic schedule. So make sure you get those schedules really looked at and aligned properly so everyone is available to do what they need to do during orientation. Rooms and reservations. We recently moved into a new facility, so we have amazing conference room space for our orientation. So we don't really have to book that because that's available to us. But prior to our move, we definitely had to block any of the spaces that we needed for trainings because we were sharing it with the institution. So make sure you have that. Also, we have to travel for EMR training and any type of IT training or with our clinical ed department. So we have to make sure that not only their trainers are available, but any of their training space is available for us as well. Michelle did mention that feeding our residents is super important. So even planning out your menus now, even if you're not purchasing the food, knowing at what cadence you'll feed them or what sort of items you'll have so you don't overuse, Mexican food or whatever, that may be handy to have that in place now. And buying swag. Michelle did mention white coats. Every residency in the nation is buying white coats right now. So if you wait too long to have those items, there may be a delay and you may have difficulty with producing some of the things you need for those events. All right. Activities to include. These are just some topics, some buckets of topics that I know our program is going to talk to our residents about every July. Obviously, you need to introduce them to the program, the structure, the expectations, not only the program expectations, but the institutional expectations. Code of conduct and professionalism, high hitter, that's an important topic. Very rarely does someone get written up on medical knowledge. If someone's getting written up or if there's an issue at the start, it's usually on professionalism or misunderstanding the expectations of what we expect from our residents as they get started. Any training that's required, integration to the program, you're hitting some of these items at the same time. Any type of team building or establishing expectations or establishing engagement, those are kind of going to be blended in with a lot of different buckets. But these are some of the items that you think about, which will then have subcategories in each of those buckets. All right. Hey, Michelle.
All right. So this is a really important thing that you want to start off with. You want to set the tone, set the expectations, be super clear on what your residents are responsible for. This is a part of the orientation where if it's not yourself, you want somebody whose voice really carries weight to really get these things clear and across to your residents, whether it's your program director, APD, your CMO or your DIO. I personally review a lot of these things in my nuts and bolts portion of the admin orientation, but definitely you want somebody who is really going to hone in and review all of these things and make sure that things are super clear to your residents, and then they can't say that they were never told these things. You really want to talk about your mission and your vision. You'll want to present the organizational chart so that way they know if they have a problem with this, who would they go to? You'll want to review not necessarily every policy and procedure, but the major ones that they're going to be needing to use on a daily basis. You definitely want to make sure that there is a clear expectation on professionalism. Like Hannah mentioned earlier, that is usually one of the major downfalls for residents. And you want to make sure that your code of conduct and communications are really clear and explained to all of your residents. I go very heavy on the communications portion in my part of the orientation. I literally have to say, if you receive an email, you are expected to read and respond to this email. So it feels like a lot of it is going to be things that you shouldn't have to explain to people. But again, you want to make sure that they can never say that they were never told. So you want to be sure to spell all of those things out. Review your dress code. Review all of the major things that are in both the employee handbook from your institution as well as your program policies and procedures as well.
We actually have a document that the residents of the incoming class sign individually that say they did receive the policies and procedures. They have been reviewed with them, so they do acknowledge that they received those, so we have that on file. But one of the things that we do every July with all three classes and also with faculty is our program director has written a multi-page letter to them that discusses expectation. And we read it as a program and remind everyone and reset the expectations at the beginning of the academic year on what is expected. This is professionalism, communication, timeliness to clinic. Are you still arriving on time? Sometimes by the end of the academic year, people get a little bit of laissez-faire on how when they're arriving to clinic or when they're coming into didactics. Sometimes we'll even discuss proper phone etiquette in didactics or proper laptop use in didactics. We just revisit what those expectations are so everyone is on the same page and we're all holding each other to the same standard. All right, equipping them with all the necessary resources. I mean, this is everything. Password, username and passwords to all the different platforms that you know that they're going to need. We use Outlook in our email at our institution. I will actually have everyone open their laptops. I'll have them log into their email. I'll show them how to create folders in their little drive so that they can file things. I'll show them where to find our shared calendar so they can look at didactics lectures and things like that. Oftentimes, what I expect them to do, I will actually have them do with me in the room so I know they can access new innovations. I know I can watch them log duty hours for that day. All those things that we are expecting them to do, I'll show them how to get there. I'll give them access to it. I'll make sure that they can demonstrate what I expect them to do. But maps, they need to know where to find the bathrooms when they get to rotation. Oftentimes we'll do as many interactive activities as possible when giving them this information. Some of the stuff you just need to hand them a paper or give them an app access, but some of it we will bring people throughout our institution in to give them a tour of something or come in to speak about something. And the reason we do that is the more people they can meet during orientation, once they leave our program office at the end of the month, those are the faces they'll recognize when walking through campus or seeing them on the floors. And that really helps them feel more engaged and more at home when they're recognizing those friendly faces. So make sure they know how to get a hold of people, make sure they know guidelines for communication. Like for instance, do you have an appropriate quiet hours where after this time in the evening, unless it's an emergency, we're expected not to reach out to each other. We have an app for social interactions that I don't have my notifications on, but then I have another app where we send very important memos to each other. Those notifications stay on all the time. So even discussing the differences in how you communicate with each other or in what platforms you will use time sensitive information, those are all super important things. Oh yes, one of the questions is what apps do we use? We use WhatsApp for our social interactions. So a lot of times that'll be kudos, pictures, different, just fun things, sometimes a meme, happy birthday. If someone passes step 3, we'll throw that into the WhatsApp. But when it comes to time sensitive, very important information that they are responsible for acting on, we use Remind. And so that is more of a one-way communication app. Our program director uses it just to send out information that they're responsible for, but the WhatsApp tends to be more interactive, fun, threads that they can do, and they can look at any time. They don't have to be on it all the time. All right. I think it's back to you.
All right, so they are all set up to be a successful employee. We've gotten the admin part of the orientation underway. Now we need to figure out how to set them up for success on being a resident and being a doctor. You want to make sure that they have their EMR training, their necessary certifications. This is going to be their first time in clinic. Are they set up to be successful in that? You're going to have likely a mix of workshops and didactics and more hands-on stuff that they need to complete. A really awesome thing that Hannah's program does, they actually distribute a mock ITE to help find potential deficits that may have occurred during their medical school training. So with our program in particular, they will do in the first week of July, they will do their first session of EMR training, and that's just to get them into the system and learn how to use it. Then they will actually have their first clinic the day after. Then they will have a follow-up EMR training afterwards because they've used it, they dipped their toes in it, and now they can actually come equipped with questions that will help them be more successful in the program. With their first clinics, we have a very kind of slow ramp up process. Our residents, our interns, I should say, do see one patient an hour in the first quarter of the year. And their first two clinics, they actually have their own designated preceptor. So it is a 1-to-1 ratio. So our interns kind of take over the clinic floors when they're in clinic that first week. It's a very crowded precepting room. But they will get one-on-one precepting for their first two clinics. And then their third clinic, they will be in a 2-to-1 ratio with another intern. So that way they can actually learn how to precept in a group. And then by usually the end of the second week, they will be fully immersed into the regular precepting ratios with senior residents. And we actually have our third-year residents act as junior preceptors when they're in those smaller ratios, so that way there's even more teaching and learning happening in those sessions.
Yeah, we do something very similar to that. You know, a lot of times with orientation, they don't know what they don't know. So there's only so many questions that they're going to ask or think about asking if they've never actually done it before. So when ours also see patients at a very slow pace in clinic to start, but we will actually take them to clinic in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, we'll have them bring their laptops to the program office. There's a couple residents here with them, and in addition to a faculty member, and we will allow them to close their clinic notes here at the program office. That way they have people there that they can ask questions about, helping with creating dot phrases and making sure that there's someone there to kind of walk them through so that they can work on that note efficiency, because we know that really inefficient note closure is one of the biggest burnouts in residency. So we really try to give them a leg up on that from the start. All right, establishing engagement. This is what you're going to try to infuse in every activity that you have. So really, really help them understand that they are a huge part of the program and a meaningful part of the program, the institution and the community. That's kind of part of what we do when we show them the org chart. This allows them to know how they report up, but it also shows them where they are and that they are going to be considered physician leaders almost from the start when they begin as physician residents. We give them an opportunity to also get to know the community during their residency or during their orientation. We have a really fun week that happens during July where high school students from our local community learn about all the different career pathways within healthcare. And so our interns actually go and talk to them about their journey, get to work with them, kind of do some procedural type stuff with them, and then they float down the river later at the end of the week as part of one of the things to kind of help them get to know the community, what's available out there, activities that are available, but help them step into that physician leader role right from the start. We make sure that they are connected early with mentors. So that might be the faculty advisor. That's also a senior resident. They get to spend time with their chief residents to really make that connection right away. And all attendings and faculty can be mentors to anyone, doesn't have to be just assigned. So we really try to facilitate opportunities for them to eat lunch together, have fun team building activities together so that we can start building those relationships early. I can't force someone to bond with a teammate, but we do know that those that really connect with their classmates tend to be healthier, happier, and stronger residents throughout the 3 years of residency. So we really encourage that. And we talk to them about the why of these different activities. So hopefully they are open to getting to know each other and building those connections right from the start. I don't know if you heard the ACGME talk about well-being and burnout with residents, but one of the things that they mentioned is despite being surrounded by so many people, loneliness is one of the biggest reasons why they experience burnout in residency. And so really being able to create that engagement, those connections and those relationships right from the start are going to be super important to the well-being of our residents. All right, special activities. I did mention one of these already, that float down that we have. But think about what sort of things your community has to offer. What's special about your community? What's special about your program? What's special about your people? And really highlight some of those items during the time that you have with them in front of you during orientation. So we have them connect with those high school students. We show them how they can cool off in our super hot summer by floating down the river. And one of the other things that we've been doing for a few years is called a support person orientation. So really what that is, it can be an in-person and you also can have a virtual option. We provide both, but we invite the loved ones or the support system that our residents have to come in for this discussion. Our program, our APD, our program director, our APD, and our chief residents are there in addition to our admin team. But we talk about what does residency truly look like? What are the rigors? As a loved one of this brand new resident, how can they best support them during those 3 years of training? What does an inpatient rotation look like versus an outpatient rotation? Do they truly work 80 hours a week? Well, yes, sometimes they do. And on those rotations where they are working that heavy schedule, how can you best support them during that time? So we've really realized that when someone is in residency, when you come with a family, let's say we have a married resident come with a family, that's a good and bad thing. It can be a double-edged sword because yes, they have their loved ones there supporting them, but they also have their loved ones there wanting to spend time with them, needing them. And so how do they navigate both? It's kind of like having a deployed family member that still comes home every night, but is yet unavailable because they're studying or they're closing notes or they're detached because they pronounced their first patient dead that day on shift. So we really kind of talk about what that looks like and how the family members can navigate their journey, navigate the journey of their resident, and support each other during those 3 years. It also gives the family members time to meet each other so they can maybe develop those connections with other family members while they're here during those 3 years. So those are some of the things that we have started incorporating and have the time to incorporate it because it's a 4-week orientation. So I'm going to let Michelle talk about her Spanish course.
Yes, so our residents, usually after the first 2 weeks of their admin orientation, they will actually go to Dartmouth Medical School and they will spend usually between 5 and 7 days. It depends on the year, but they do a Spanish immersion course over there. And like Hannah was saying, it's a really great opportunity for bonding for the class. So even if we do happen to match with residents that are native or fluent Spanish speakers, they still go to this immersion program. One, they do have a great interdisciplinary setup for the teaching where you'll have native or advanced speakers in a group with beginner or intermediates, but also we just really stress the importance of that class bonding. I've actually seen firsthand when there is a resident who opts out of a really key part of orientation where there is that opportunity to build that bond with your classmates. If they opt out of that, that's usually the resident that doesn't have as much of a relationship with the rest of the class, and they kind of feel like the odd man out. So we really stress the importance of always continuing to build those relationships with your classmates. Another fun thing that we do during our orientation, similar to what Hannah does, we do focus a lot on our community, and during July, our interns will go on a community medicine scavenger hunt. It is a 4-hour-long retreat, and each intern goes with their advisor and ideally their team MA if they have a designated MA at that point. And then they'll go on foot. We're a small city, it's 7 square miles, so pretty easy to navigate and get around. But they'll actually go on foot to various places in our community, kind of seeing the city through the eyes of your patient. So they'll go to the Head Start office or the senior center, and then they take selfies of their group at each of those places that they're assigned to go to. Then they meet up at a local restaurant a couple of hours into the retreat, and they'll compile all of the pictures together and do a really awesome slideshow. And they get to eat really awesome and amazing local food. So that's a really special part of our orientation that we love to celebrate.
And I think probably what you're hearing as we talk about the different things we do is whenever possible, we really try to get them up and out of the seats so that they're not sitting in talks all the time. Some of the information that we give them is going to need to be in presentation style hours, but we try to be as interactive and allow them to move and interact and get to know each other and the content to allow it to be fun and also stick.
So the key things to remember is number one, this is one of the very few times in their residency where you're going to have every single person from the class all together all at once. So definitely value that, but also know that this is the beginning of their program. They have the most energy, they have the most enthusiasm, and they're going to try to absorb as much as possible. So capitalize on that and just be sure to get all of the information that you want them to know out during that time. But also remember, there is a lot of information happening. They will likely have information overload, and they're really only going to absorb maybe half of what gets told to them during that time. So just be mentally prepared to have to repeat yourself over and over and over again, probably up to several times. But it kind of comes with the territory. Like I said, a lot of people are doing this between 2 and 6 weeks. So there's a lot of things happening and they're really just not going to absorb it. And you're going to think to yourself, wait a minute, I know I explained this during orientation. Why are they asking me how to fill out an expense report? We did this. There's just way too many things happening and they're not going to fully absorb everything. And just remember, it doesn't all have to be serious, and you should really try to incorporate a lot of fun activities. You know, do scavenger hunts, do dinners. We also have a welcome barbecue at our program director's house. So just remember, while this is a time where they're learning how to be doctors, they also need to remember what it's like to be a human being and just hang out with people and be themselves. So try to incorporate that as much as possible. And, we're dealing with, generations that are really wanting to just know why things are happening. It's no longer acceptable to just say, well, because you need to know this stuff. They really want to know why. So just be mindful and intentional with all of the information that you're giving them and just explain why. And if you can be personable with the experiences, try to incorporate that as much as possible. You're going to be spending a lot of time with these folks, so you really want to make this time as valuable and as fruitful as possible.
Absolutely. So that was a lot, but we also know that you may have questions. So we'd like to open it up and take any questions that you may have. I think Becky's looking at the chat if there were any
Yeah.
chats in there.
So
But
there were some questions that came up asking about if we pay people during orientation. So I think the question was posed, do you pay them from day one if you start them in June?
We do, yes.
And since we don't start until July 1, of course, they get paid, so.
And then there's a bunch of people just commenting on the same things that you guys were, what they do during orientation. A lot of people do HR requirements, EPIC training. First rotation is introductory to family medicine, which is also what we do at LaGrange. So there's all of that. And then it says, Hannah, do you mind sharing what apps you use? You already answered that. And then that's it. That's all that's in the chat. Anybody have any questions now?
All right, well, we're still on for questions, but I do want to make sure that you have an opportunity to look at the QR code at the end. If you are completing the new coordinator orientation or the series, you're going to want to scan that. There's a set of questions there, and then you'll be able to earn credit for being part of this webinar.
And we will post this on our YouTube page, YouTube channel, as well as we will send it out to the listserv.
Orientation is actually one of my favorite times of the year. It's a great opportunity to just really set the tone for that new class and bond with them. We have had the benefit of being their pen pal for the last 3 months leading up to orientation. So we're like their best friend when they get here, which is amazing. And so to really just be able to spend time with them and help them settle in, we make sure you have that open door policy where they can touch base with you, because they're really going to lean on you heavily, especially during orientation when they're getting off and running. But set that tone, be super clear with those expectations so they're not in the gray about anything, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Know
Yes,
that
and also, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if at all possible, one thing that I also do, because I know that it's information overload, I actually do a one-page handout for my residents. I call it the Michelle Survival Kit. And it's just kind of a quick overview of all of the stuff that we review during our nuts and bolts. So, references to key policies, reminding them how to file an expense report, and just anything that they would need. I hand it out to them, and then they're able to laminate it if they want, or keep it in a folder, or hang it up in the resident workroom, so that way they always have that access to that information whenever they need it.
Well, you have our emails, so if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out with any questions that may come up after the webinar.
Well, we have
And
another question.
oh, yep.
Question is, has anyone started a support group for families like spouse or significant others of the resident?
So in our program, I feel like every year there seems to be one spouse champion or one significant other champion, and they're very active with making sure that all of the significant others do meetups, do play dates with kids and stuff like that. I think if there isn't one already existing for your residents, definitely try to get one started, and then it'll probably just maintain itself. We have had to do very little with that. Like I said, it seems like every year there's always one spouse champion that wants to get everybody together and plan activities and stuff.
Yeah, I echo that. That's been our similar experience for us as well. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Well, good luck as you're preparing. And we wish you all the best during onboarding. Thanks for joining us this morning, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.